Hello, everyone. This is Ian Iliana. Welcome to I Hate LA, Love Me Anyway. I did a podcast earlier in the day where I once again just feeling the stress of living in Los Angeles when I don't want to live here. I know many people do, and I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you can live in a city that burned down its own forests and has smog and has the sun shining the way that it does. It's just not what I want. It's just not what I want. And now I have this veteran vendor from the VA saying, we need to talk to you in order to confirm the appointment that we have, which is, I already did an appointment, so I'm done with appointments. But they want to do another one. And then on top of that, they're trying to force me to speak to a woman in order to have an appointment, which is ridiculous because I already told them the last time, there's no need for that. If you need me to confirm, because they have it in their email that if you need to talk to us by email, you have the right to do so. And I said, well, fine. You give me that right. You say that that's the way that I can do things, then that's how I'm going to do things. After my PTSD from military sexual trauma from the United States Air Force, I'm just done. I mean, beyond just the flashbacks, the anxiety, the rage, the depression, I am just done. I grew up with having girls who were friends, girls who were girlfriends. I've had that. But after being sexually abused by Master Sergeant Miranda, no, no, that cannot happen. I can be cordial, and when I lived outside of Los Angeles, I was very cordial. I was of the mindset that, you know what, if I'm just polite but off-putting, that would be enough. In LA, I don't have that luxury. I just have to be a mean, terrible person. Well, I have someone new in my chat, and welcome everyone. I'm Ian Iliana. I'm an environmentalist who lives in Los Angeles, and I talk about environmental issues, specifically the LA fires, which I will not shut up about. I will not stop. Every day is going to be a discussion on the LA fires. Why? Because Hollywood has it in their heads that the human tragedy was more important than the tragedy of all the animals, the birds that were in these Los Angeles fires that called these forests homes because there was no room for them in Los Angeles County because you built all of these concrete edifices to your fucking egos and you pushed all the trees outside the county into these forests, which should have been protected, which should have been valued, which should have been part of you. But Los Angeles doesn't see it that way. They never do. And I understand that most people don't want to hear this. I'm still going to continue on because if I live in Los Angeles, I'm going to fight them. I'm going to fight them for what they're doing with climate change, what they're doing with... Hello, nice to see you, Julian. Welcome to the show. I am Ian Iliana. I am an environmentalist who lives in Los Angeles. I talk about environmental issues. Hi, Gray. Nice to meet you. Those animals and birds that lived in those forests, they had families, just like you, just like anybody. They had little ones. They fell in love, or their equivalent of. They found their partners. They were trying to raise families. And you know what humans did? They burned down their entire forest. They burned down the forest, and then the fire engulfed them in flames. Why is that not front page news that humans killed animals and birds, that they burned down these forests that we depend on for air? I want that to be something we can talk about. And I don't actually know where that is. Where is that, Gray? You can write down where that's. I'm an ignorant American. I don't travel that often. They kind of make it cost prohibitive. Mike, that's a very interesting comment. And Gray, I'm upset, and I do agree with you. They think that when they get into their cars and oh, I didn't take it that way. But either way, I'm going to continue with the point that I was going to make if it was going in a different direction. They treat the pollution as something that will affect them later on in life, that it doesn't matter now that we're polluting our own atmosphere. Look, it's a human bodily function to fart. I've never seen a person start a campaign against farting. But we're doing a lot more than that with these cars, with these trucks that we have. We are depriving ourselves of air. We are depriving ourselves of the ability to think rationally because we are oxygen deprived. When people talk about Americans and their short tempers and their penchant for dramatics, it's because they're oxygen deprived, because they don't go out into nature. They pretty much stay indoors all day, either playing video games or watching telly. And because of that, they are oxygen deprived. Not enough clean air is reaching their lungs, not enough clean air is reaching their brains. And I can say that because I'm an American veteran. I served the country, I'm honorably discharged. And even if I wasn't a veteran, you always have the ability to criticize your government. If your government is doing something like allowing pollution to run rampant as it is, well, oxygen is an element in itself. It's usually found in a diatomic molecular arrangement because that's the most stable for it. But even so, there's not enough of it. Hello, Luke Brown. Welcome to the chat. No, I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well at all. Just as the chat was starting, I received some news that the Canadian artist who I think is the coolest woman I can think of said, yes, you may cover my song. And that's an amazing feeling that I was allowed to do that. Oh, I'm gonna try and do that without blushing. Her name is Alex Johnson, AlexJohnson, Alex Johnson. And I did a very traditional punk rock version of her song Ultraviolet, and she sang it, and it's a rock song, but it's a power ballad rock song. And I said, I'm gonna rock with you. Then I'm going to rock. So I'm very excited that I think that'll be out on YouTube within, I don't know, a couple minutes. It should be out now, technically. But even so, that's amazing news, because despite everything that's going on, that means something, that a Canadian artist said, I appreciate what you're trying to do for Canada. I appreciate how hard you toil in your studio in order to bring awareness to Canadian issues. Thank you, Luke, for the compliment. And Mike, I'm absolutely in agreement with you. When I say oxygen deprived, I don't mean that people are on the floor gasping for air. There are two words that I want to teach my chat, because I think that's a very important thing, is to be someone that can educate people. There's anoxia and hypoxia. Anoxia is the absence of oxygen altogether, as in there is no air, or it's less than 20% air. Hypoxia would be depleted air, or air that is within the 80% saturation rate. Now, when people do your blood oxygen levels in a lab, it'll usually show up as 99, because your body will naturally filter out bad air. But it can only do that for so much. And if I get things wrong, I get things wrong. Mike, I'm not the perfect person to have this conversation. I just happen to be the only person having this conversation. So I can't please everyone, but I'm going to continue anyway, because this is something that affects every country, every great. I believe in dialogue, so if you have a counterpoint or anything, by all means share. If you're still in the chat, if not, I guess I'll continue with the discussion. I started this podcast because I believe in the sanctity of life in general. I'm not a pacifist in by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't believe in starting a war with other species. And that's what I feel like these fires are. These fires are symptomatic of a battle between humans and animals. And I don't understand that. Well, what exactly did sparrows or blue jays, whatever the Sancapua, birds, what exactly did they do to Los Angeles that you burned down their forests, that you burned down their homes? What exactly did the rabbits that were going through the tree roots, what did they do to you, Los Angeles, that you set fire to their forest? And I will not apologize, Mike, for being emotional about the slaughter of animals and birds by a greedy county because of their environmental practices that led to the forest fires. I've talked at length about how I have been sexually abused by the American government. And yes, that does turn me off Team Human. It doesn't completely turn me off Team Human, because I have to admit that I'm human in several ways, even though I am a mutant. But that's neither here nor there. If you live in Los Angeles, then you've seen the mutant of me, whatever. But see, that kind of throws me off. But I have to continue on. And the logic is, okay, well, if you're gonna be rude, Mike, I have to let you go. That's all right. Excuse me, everyone. I just have to take a moment. I believe in discourse. I mean, if people want to come into this chat, you're always welcome. If you disagree with me, please disagree with me. But if you want to be rude, I have to say, please find another chat. This is a chat to talk about environmental issues. This is a chat to talk about what we can do as humans to maybe work with the nature, work within a cycle of cooperation with an ecosystem that we live within. These animals, these birds, were displaced from their natural habitat. And then you burn down where they live now. And I want to be logical about it. And the logical thing is, this affects more than just these animals. I mean, it's terrible that these animals were burned alive and the birds too. But it's also terrible that all of that smoke, 10,000 acres incinerated and then thrown into the atmosphere as the winds carried them across. Where does that go? Because it doesn't go back out into the ocean. No, it goes into our towns, it goes into our homes, it goes into our lungs. So that's the logic of it. The logic is the way to prevent these forest fires is to start reducing pollution so we can bring the temperatures down so that we can start irrigating some of these fields that these forests seem to be in, because it used to be just a forest, but it's not really a forest if the trees aren't healthy, if the trees are thirsty for water. So it's boring, it's repetitive, but I have to continue. Somebody has to speak up for these animals, birds, and humans that are suffering because of a lack of environmental justice. I feel very deeply, and I will not apologize for that. I will not turn that off. And I know that that's like slightly hypocritical because, you know, I have nothing but women trying to connect with me, women trying to talk to me, and because of my PTSD, I don't allow it. Like, to me, women do not have a monopoly on feeling deeply, on being caring and nurturing. That's something that should be within all of us and expressed appropriately, which is why I'm expressing it right now, because you should care. You should care, and you should feel something when you think of tragedy like this. And the tragedy touches more than just people who lost their homes and people who died. I mean, who grieves for those animals? Who cries for them? I don't know. I'm a person who thinks that way. I'm a person who thinks that we could do more, that if we cared just a little bit, life here would be reasonable, it would be decent. If you've ever been to a forest, if you've ever had plants in your home, you know the difference. You know the difference between having fresh air and then having air that comes out of the tailpipe of somebody else's car. You know the difference. So why do we do this to ourselves? We like to think of animals as incredibly stupid and beneath us, or birds just chirping away. We don't think of those birds as having a language, and not just having a language, having dialects within that language and having entire conversations between each other. That it's not just noise that these birds are making with their beaks. You know, they're actually having conversations between each other. They're intelligent, very intelligent, but we eat some of them. Oh, hi, Blocks Fruit God. And the rest we just treat as either pets or just beneath us. So I'm throwing logic out the window. I'm saying emphatically, we have to do something about California's attitude to just set the forest on fire. Call it whatever you will. This is not an accident. It is not. This is arson. This is arson. California burned down these forests maliciously, knowingly. No one thinks that when you drive a diesel-based car, that the air that comes out of the exhaust system is breathable. No one thinks that way. But somehow I'm in a state that looks at these forest fires and says, I don't know what happened. That's just weird. The forest fires are a direct result of environmental policies that political leadership here in California have allowed to just hurt us. And I don't care if that's a grammatically correct sentence. I'm exhausted and I'm not at my best. I'm not the perfect person to talk about this, but I'm just the only person talking about this. So bear with me if I am less than perfect as I talk about how important it is to speak to your elected officials and tell them, no, you do not have the right to set fire to the forest because it's inconvenient to you that a bunch of animals and birds live there, and that you would eventually love to put a condominium or some sort of mini mall where these forests are, because you're just greedy American capitalist pigs. And there's no other way to say that. And I'm an American capitalist pig because I feed right into it. I take my money and I buy subscriptions to streaming, Amazon, you know, just Disney, Netflix, Crunchyroll. I pay for these things. And every time those people have to move anywhere, they have to do anything large scale, they're polluting too. So I 100% take responsibility as the American capitalist pig feeding into a society that is ruining the environment. I can take responsibility for that. I can take responsibility for what I do. I can feel the shame and the guilt for being a part of this state and in any way patronizing any of these restaurants or businesses that somehow are responsible for these forest fires. Why isn't anybody else? There are petitions online right now, and I want to link it in my podcast description, of all of the Mayor Karen Bass should resign or Governor Gavin Newsom should resign. But I don't. I sign the petitions, but I don't. Here's why. It's far too easy to put all of the blame on these politicians instead of saying that you elected them and that you shirk your own responsibility as a citizen not to get on the phone, not to write a letter and tell them, I disagree, or here's a suggestion that I am on X as daddy. And every day I try and reach out and say, change.org/clear LA smog, change.org/clear LA smog. And the reason why I do that with my deaf music videos is because every chance I get, I try to say, do you have 2 minutes to talk about the environment? I'm not a celebrity in any way. I have no celebrity status. I have no res, no respectability. I look like a werewolf, and I understand that I'm not a pretty person. It doesn't discount the fact that I'm absolutely right that it is a construction issue. And I'm stuck being a veteran. I'm stuck being a veteran when I have expertise in engineering because of my PTSD from military sexual trauma. I'm stuck in this position where I have all of the knowledge that I would need in order to reduce pollution here, but I can't reach out to people except through a podcast, because that's the only avenue I have left to try and convince people that even outside of Los Angeles and California, we have to have a conversation about how we handle transportation. It used to be that any road will do or any car will do. That's not good enough anymore. It's not. I can't expect people to just get the epiphany to have an electric car. It's neither here nor there. My entire program is designed to accommodate both sides of the equation, people with electric cars and people with diesel base. So change.org/clear LA smog. I'm so disturbed with my PTSD that I don't know if I can remain in America anymore. I think I really should just move to Canada, where there are musicians and people there that understand that you can't be so selfish that you think that these forests don't matter, that these animals and birds, they don't matter. They do. Those trees matter. And when you are a part of that, you feel better. I love technology. I love video games. I even love, Bandai Namco is one of my favorite companies. I tried to play Singularity. Echoes of Ada, and it crashed every single time, and it would not play. And I have a Lenovo Legion Go, and I thought I have to support this game because it's saying something that's important, and sometimes that's what I do in the absence of an electoral booth. There is voting with your money. How you spend your money defines what you believe in. When you choose a movie, when you choose to spend your time watching a television show, you are showing yourself and showing these companies that you support their view on things. One of the major reasons why I pay for my Amazon Prime subscription, because they have shows like The Boys, they have shows like The Rig. They start talking about environmental issues in a way that if you pay attention, it makes sense. I paid for an Apple subscription so I could start watching things like Silo, because no one else is having this conversation. Everyone wants to do a reality show. Everyone wants to talk about, marriage and some sort of reality show where you're voting off people, and just drama. And there's nothing more dramatic than, are you happy? Are you spiritually fulfilled living the way that you do? Because if you keep buying things to fill a void and it doesn't fill it, then what are you going to do? Are you just going to continue that cycle, or are you going to try something new? I encourage my fans and the people who come into this chat, challenge yourself to go to a park, go into a forest, safely, and just enjoy the quiet, enjoy the crisp, clean air, and enjoy just that feeling that will come over you of, there is something here that reminds me of who I could be, or what it means to be healthy, what it means to live in your skin and move your body. When you hike, you are using your body in a way that you normally don't. You're moving in different directions. You're having to overcome rocks and roots, and your heart will race a little bit more. You'll breathe that much more deeply. These are things that we miss when we're stuck in cubicles. These are things that we miss when we're stuck in cities like Los Angeles, where they just make it that much harder to appreciate the beauty of the world around you. And it's not right. It's not right to deny yourself the ability to have some precious alone time between yourself and nature. Commune with nature. And yes, it might be because I am First Nation that I feel so deeply about forests and things like that. And I speak to animals and I speak to plants. And I don't care what anybody says. I speak to animals and I speak to plants. It's the way of my people. It's the way of my ancestors. It's how we have done things forever. It is 2025. I'm not changing that side of me. That's who I am. So I challenge my audience, go out into nature and Feel that change. Feel the change when you don't have to stare at your phone for these quick jolts of happiness. I use my phone. I use my phone to make music, and I use my phone to surf the internet. I don't use my phone to make phone calls. I have to call the VA, but that's the only number I use. I don't even call my family anymore because it's not the same as being right there in front of them. We're missing something when we're using technology. I support technology. I want technology to advance. But how can we talk about the new chipsets in the Lenovo Legion Go S, or the new operating system that they have with the Steam Deck version, and not talk about the operating system that we have in California that doesn't care about the environment? These forest fires are symptomatic of an attitude that if it isn't human, if it isn't fiscal, it is worthless. I disagree with that. I think that trees and forests mean something. That to be near that, no matter how far away, still means something. There is a tree that knows who you are. There's a tree that knows you, maybe not by name, but it knows you because it is sensitive enough, and I have to believe this, it is sensitive enough to be able to tell carbon dioxide and to tell that its oxygen goes somewhere. Plants are very intelligent. I really want to start having experts on my show because I have to have a botanist in order to explain how trees communicate, how trees... Well, Vanessa, welcome to the chat, and I've already said I'm a half-Brit alien. I literally live here among the savage Americans and have picked up some of their very annoying factors, and all my mates were either Welsh, Irish, Scottish, or Australian, and I would sound a lot more like them than I would than anyone in a specific area. So thank you for coming into the chat. And like I said, I'm not trying to impress anyone. I've spoken the same way for, I'm like 40 now, so all my life. I consistently spoken this way, so whatever. I'm pretty sure that it means something to you to have that kind of civic pride, but isn't your country still trying to figure itself out too? So I would kind of slow your roll if your country isn't exactly at its best either. Just saying. I love England. I love all of British culture, but I think we're kind of hurting globally, and therefore, if you really want to be nationalist about it, like, sort your own country out before you speak about other people. And that's what I've decided to do, is I'm trying to sort America out, because if when people say America number one, America first, whatever, I say, well, you're going to have to prove that then. And you're going to have to prove that on human rights issues. You're going to have to prove that on environmental issues. Yeah, some people just want to be rude, and, you know, I'm just going to... That's a good sign actually. I've had two people be rude to me in the same. You see, you know you're good when professional people are rude to you because that means that you're saying something that's important. You see, they wouldn't do that if I was just doing karaoke and singing and having a good time. But because of the fact that I'm speaking about a real issue that we have where the air quality is affecting us as a nation, affecting our health, affecting our cardiovascular health, affecting our weight. How many of us are obese because we don't go hiking, because we don't live in a forest, which would require us to move more muscle groups, recruit more muscle groups in order to move around? I mean, when you walk down a street which is perfectly level, which is boring and flat, no wonder why your body looks so fat, and which is why Americans are mostly fat. I mean, I hate to say it, but the moment I rejected American culture as the way that I would run my life, my health improved. When I stopped going to the theater, when I stopped going to fast food restaurants, when I stopped just existing in a culture that is so beauty obsessed and so devoid of any soul, I noticed that I grew so much more healthy. I mean, I look at my hair and it is a mess. It is wild. It is savage. It's still on my head. I look at a bunch of people and their health is terrible. And I wonder how things would change if they had activity in their life, if they had a reason to visit the forests. These forests of California aren't that far. They're precious. We should be traveling there as much as possible. And I know that it will irk people to to hear someone speak the way that I do, but I don't really care that much. I mention it now because I think you must probably hurt inside if you lash out at a person for that, but you're not going to shake Americanism into me. You're not going to try and encourage me to be more American when being more American means being fat and lazy. There are Americans who aren't that way, but you have to ask yourself if the majority of you are fat and lazy, then whatever you're doing can't exactly be American. It could be more true to whatever your cultural background is, but if the vast majority of people are fat and lazy because they subscribe to a lifestyle which is sedentary, then that is what your country is. I love how we've had several first ladies talk about, oh, we're going to tackle childhood obesity. You're going to tackle childhood obesity, but you're not going to tackle the fact that the air outside is bad, that there's not enough movement, there's not enough community involvement. If your children were involved in, like, on the weekends, planting fresh flowers in the local parks, they would be active. Now, it's not exactly the same thing as going to the gym. It might actually be better. But no one thinks that way in most American areas. That's something that you would see in Europe. The idea of horticulture being something that's interesting to people. They have festivals for that. They have festivals for that here too, but the vast majority of us just turn on the television and we sit down and that's it. That's our lives. I mean, I'd like to think that when I punched my television because I was upset at what one character had done to another character and I was triggered by my PTSD, that I would be more upset about the loss of the television, and I'm not. I'm really not. It snapped me out of this cycle I have, and I think that this happens to a lot of us where we watch these television shows, we have them at times which are normally around dinner time. We're already stressed from our day of work or whatever's going on. And when we watch these shows, we have meals with them. You know, we watch the ups and downs of their lives. We feel involved in it. That's not healthy. It's not healthy to do that. So I feel bad that, you know, I destroyed a TV which I was considering donating to people who need it, but I don't think that way anymore. I think that I would probably give someone a book before I give them a television. Because at least a book, you know, you read it, you have a moment to connect to something without commercials, without, you know, this giant screen that makes people feel larger than life when they're just people reading lines very well and they should be paid for it. And I'm not always so against the entertainment industry. And thank you for the love, people who are sending me in the chat. But when we set up our lives to be participants, we notice that there's a change. When I did my first podcast, I was nervous. I was nervous because I said, I'm going to stick to one topic and I'm going to try and engage and reach with people toward a goal of environmental justice here in California. Have I succeeded? No, not yet, but that hasn't stopped me. Every day I do at least one podcast where I can at least show that someone is trying. If you disagree with my views on environmental justice, start your own podcast. If you have a counterpoint and you feel like it wasn't being made, start your own podcast. Because we have to get it into our heads as global citizens that this is our planet too. When you elect people to be your official, they're supposed to represent your interest. But if you don't make what your interests known to them often, they can't represent you fully. Do I still think Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass should resign? Of course I should. Ask that of people to do. It's the least they could do. I still think that it's important that whoever they put in there next listens to the people and thinks of the people when they make decisions that involve our motorways. the Grammys just happened, and I'm in the music business, and I understand that it's an important thing. I'm sure Beyonce winning an album of the year is a huge deal. I'm sure she wanted that. It's the first time she's ever gotten that award. Congratulations. But if this entire state is engulfed in flames, what does that matter? You're from Texas. Texas has wildfires too. What does it matter? These awards, these ceremonies to celebrate artistic talent, should there be awards? Yes. But what does it matter when your home is gone? What does it matter? I mean, I'm glad that Chappelle Rowan got breakout artist. I'm glad. But Los Angeles is where I live right now, and Los Angeles was on fire. It continues to have these wildfires. And I will never be that successful. I don't care to be, because my goal right now is to just talk to people and maybe just convince them to think more critically. I don't expect them to change their minds. Whatever your mind is, if you want to join the fight against pollution, or you want to just be a selfish pig, that's your decision. But if you for a moment think about what you're doing, what you do with your life, what you do with your money, then I did what I was supposed to do with this podcast. And I want to take the time to thank all of the artists who allow me to do covers of the music. Thank you, Gwen Stefani. Thank you, Lady Gaga, for allowing me to cover your music. I am very grateful that you allow an artist to interpret your songs in a new way. Thank you so much for that. I still want the city to stop having wildfires and not just accept it as just another thing that LA has. That complacent attitude is very dangerous. It's easy when you have money to forget about how other people live, how they struggle. And oh, hello, Jaden. Welcome to I Hate LA, Love Me Anyway. I am talking about environmental issues, as I always do. I feel as if people who are impoverished or people of color are being hurt the worst by these environmental disasters, because oftentimes they are underinformed, or they are so overwhelmed by the need to provide for themselves that they don't have the luxury to talk about things about their quality of life. So when something like 10,000 acres of forest are just incinerated and thrown into the atmosphere, they have to think, well, I have to go into work the next day. And they don't think, I'm driving in the middle of a health hazard. This is a conversation we need to have, because your governor, your mayor should have had a martial law put into place so that they could tell people, stay home. Unless you are a first responder, stay home. Stay off the roads, stay home. Instead of doing that, in my county, they just said free public transportation. And it was free public transportation for, I want to say, at least a couple weeks, if not the whole entire month of January, which is lovely, but it's not enough. I'm glad that these buses and these trains are not diesel based, but there are cars here and trucks that will still pollute. So it is not enough. Hello, Jaden. Welcome to the chat. To catch you up, I have new music coming out. It should be out right now. I am super ecstatic that I was able to get some stuff. Congratulations. You know, I will tell you that you probably should buy a mask for while you're here. There's an air quality alert for the area of California that I'm in. So if you come to LA specifically, if you go outside of LA, things are so much better. But it doesn't help that LA is there. I don't want LA to be gone. I just want LA to grow up, to realize that it can be the cold steel concrete bitch that it wants to be, but it could do that without ruining the environment. I'm not anti-technology. I'm just saying use your technology, but without polluting. Evolve past polluting the environment. Like, have whatever car you want, but evolve past polluting the environment. Hey, CT, welcome. I think things will be better once I start traveling again and get out of this area. It's a lot to fight this fight. It's a lot to be a voice for change in an area that doesn't really want that. I still think it's important, so I keep doing these podcasts. I might reach someone who decides to think more critically about how they run their lives. All right, thank you, CT, for coming in the chat. I appreciate that. Thank you for the support, and thank you, Jaden, for the support. I think it's important to engage with your audience and, if anything, show them what's important. Show them what's important, because you live on this planet. Why not have a better time in it? Why not have better health? It is really, really stressful to live in a city that makes it so difficult to enjoy the things that I want to enjoy. I mentioned in the earlier podcast that I want to see the Aurora Borealis and I want to see the Milky Way, things that you just can't see in a city like Los Angeles. Thank you, Jaden, for saying that you appreciated the podcast yesterday. Like I said, I think Sundays are just going to be silly fun days, because throughout the week I have to try and focus and get the message out there that we can do more for the environment, we can do more for our towns, villages, and communities. whether it be planting flowers in your local park or recycling. Thank you, CT. Appreciate it. Come anytime. It's the little things that we do that make life worthwhile. I mean, if you see litter and you pick it up, it doesn't change much, but maybe it brightens somebody else's day because they see that someone cares about the community, that the community is not worthless. I just like living here. I still pick up the litter in this neighborhood because I want these people to know that their area is valuable, that there is good here. So when I see things like graffiti or, see them, constantly burning methane in order to do these food trucks, or propane, sorry, I start to think they need a little guidance. So that's why I do these podcasts, so I can try and reach people. Oh, you can tell from the terrible lighting, it is definitely night where I am. All right, I am going to consider that the podcast for today. This is Ian Ileana, and you have been listening to I Hate LA, Love Me Anyway. Feel free to come into the chat and dialogue with me. I always recommend my fans and just people with opinions to speak up. It's a muscle. It's literally a muscle, the ability to flex your freedom. If you live in a country like America, we say things like freedom of speech, but then we never use it. We say things like freedom of press, but then we censor ourselves when it comes to social media because we don't understand how powerful it is. We allow things like TikTok to be taken away from us because we don't understand that is what power really is. Cheerio. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the chat. I'm just winding things up here, informing people. Thank you for coming into the chat, and there will be another podcast tomorrow, same time, 1800, and I will see all of you there. Thank you very much for joining me. This is Ian Ileana of I Hate LA, Love Me Anyway.